Hey everyone, this is Audio Dread, and today I just wanted to do a quick breakdown of, well, probably not quick, a more in-depth breakdown of what I did for the Sound Effects Guy I Challenge You number 8. I'm actually recording this a few hours after finishing it, so unlike my last video that was a little all over the place, I'll actually be able to recall everything that I did a little bit better. So let's just start going through this and we'll just kind of break it down piece by piece as it comes. So initially, because you're kind of just in darkness and the door's fading in, I wanted to have something a little outlandish or surreal sounding to kind of bring that in. So what I actually did for that, and my rule for this was that I could only use sounds that I already had. I couldn't record or download anything specifically for this. So nothing used in this was intended for this. I actually took from the very first Sound Effects Guy challenge that I did, number 6, I had this glass foley that I took with my phone. And what I did is I just slowed that down, pitch shifted it a little bit, and added some reverb to create that kind of opening ambience. And then I wanted to add in a door handle, and something interesting about the doors is I did a video with door hinges, and every door in this challenge came from these 4 samples that I had from that video, because those are the only door samples that I had. So there's a lot of doors in this video. I had to get pretty creative, but that one was just some pitch shifting and just a little bit of processing. I did very little just drag and drop sort of stuff. Well, no real drag and drop, but there were some things that had a little bit less processing than others. Some were just pitch shifting and a little reverb, and then most of them, if you were to play them side by side, you wouldn't be able to tell that one was made from the other. The other thing is, when it comes to the ambience, is I tried to do, obviously it's horror, so it sounds very different from anything else, but I still made my original sound that I was making the ambience from somehow related to the environment to the best of my abilities with what I had available. So in here you've got kind of a subway train, and what I did for this is I actually took a sample from my Halloween video that I used. Just see if I can... Didn't organize these incredibly well. I believe it was this one. Yes. So this is one that I got from freesound.org, and it's just a kind of sound of a train outside. So I took that, I slowed it down, Paul stretched it, added some reverse and forward reverb, and that's how I created this ambience here. And then that door is just another one of the creaks from those samples. It's not particularly special. I think that one was like a garden door or something to that effect. And then in here, because we had sort of a warehouse, I thought it would be fun to take my ambience from the Sound Effects Guy I Challenge You number 7, which took place in a sort of workshop environment. And so what I did is I took that, I slowed it down, and added some various reverb, and that's how I got that sort of effect. And then for the sort of, there's this electrical thing over here, and for that I just took the welding loop that I used also for that video, and I just added some reverb effects and some panning to it. Whoops, put my microphone. I'm not used to having this kind of in my face, which is nice because before it was on my desk and I had to kind of lean into it, but it does mean that I bump into it sometimes, which is unfortunate. So apologize for that. And then this door was interesting. And what I did for that door is I don't remember which creek it was from these, but one of these, and I added a timescale pitch shift and just had it pitch up and then pitch down to give it that kind of mechanical sliding sound, because I didn't really have anything else for that. And then I have this flyby that happens right here on the right, and that's actually from the game that I'm currently working on, Spiritborn. There's a boss that swings these giant stone mallets, and I just edited one of his swing sounds to do that with, which was just some speed shifting, some pitch shifting, nothing super special. And then the ambience in here, because I kind of wanted to foreshadow the fact that there's going to be the alarms going off, I actually used a clip from my Siren Head video that I did, which I believe... naming system is not very good. There we go. I think it was this one. Yeah. So this is a siren off in the distance. And I wanted to use something that was somewhat related to the sirens and alarms that were going to be going off inside of the building. And I also like the way that this builds in intensity, because that gets into something I'm going to talk about at the end of this, which is kind of the story that I was trying to tell with this, or the way that I was, the way I had planned it. Because I didn't just go into this like I do with a lot of these and just say, oh, well, this is happening and that should sound like this, because it was a lot more ambiguous. I had to get a bit more creative with it. So that was kind of my way of saying, oh, well, kind of foreshadowing that this was going to happen by using sirens. And again, a lot of speed shifting, pitch shifting, a lot of reverb added to that, a couple different kinds of reverb. And I like the kind of eerie tone that those really high pitches create. And then the way that it kind of builds up. So now, these alarms were interesting because I had nothing like that, and it's such a distinctive sound that it's really difficult to create. So I had an air horn, and I tried to use that. I tried a few different things. This probably was the hardest thing for me to create. And, whoops. What I ultimately ended up with was a hurricane siren, which I also used for my Halloween video. And what I did is I took this very beginning and then this very end where it fades out, and I clipped those together, and then I tempo shifted them up because it was still way too long, which created some really weird tones. So then I added some really specific reverse reverb that I had to adjust the settings a lot to get it to do exactly what I wanted, to kind of cover up those odd tones. And so that was the result of that, which I'm really happy with. I didn't think I was going to get something that worked this well. And something that I did intentionally that's a little different is I had it fade in really quiet, even though you're not that far away from it. And that was more just to give the kind of build of emotion, because the ambience is increasing in intensity right at the same time. And then in stark contrast to that, you have this really quiet area that's peaceful, but after everything else that just happened, because I took kind of a horror approach to it, it's almost too quiet. It's almost like it's building to something that's about to happen. And There are some things that I wish I could have done with this that I couldn't because of the restrictions that I put on myself. I had one wind sample, and that was, I believe, this. Yeah. So this is not a very good wind sample for that environment, especially as it gets more intense. But I just had to make do, so I took this, I added some mild reverb on it, I cut some of the more intense parts out, and I just set the levels really low, so it would be just kind of an underlying thing. And then for the cars, that was actually one that was one car, because so I did a video on cars at one point. See if I can find that. There it is. A four cars as horror sound effects video at one point. So I had those, but most of them were sports cars, which wasn't really appropriate. So what I had was this. And so what I did was I clipped together, or I layered together the car coming kind of into range and then it leaving range, and I put one in the left and one in the right and had them crossfade to make it sound like there were two different vehicles, and then I just messed with the levels and fading a little bit to make it not sound like such a sudden sound. So that's how I completed that. And then the ambience here, the bird ambience, is just something I happened to have. Again, for Spiritborn, there's a forest area that's going to be in the game, so I had all of this, a perfect recording for this already, and that's the one thing that I just kind of drag and dropped because I had already created something that worked really well for this environment. So now we get to this door, and this is actually really interesting because these look like sliding doors, and I just feel like they would slide, and that's why I used the sound that I used. And in order to do that, it just so happens that this very first clip here, at the very end of it, I noticed that there is sort of a slide sound. So if I just normalize that up to 0 decibels, this is actually what I used for the double doors. And all I did was some pitch shifting, reverb, and just messed with the levels, faded it in and out. And that's how I created that sort of slide effect for those very commercial looking doors. And so now we have this final ambience. And what I did for that is I actually took the ambience from number 7, the space ambience, since I'd already used it for a space theme. Now this is me whistling and trying to imitate a Gregorian chant. This was not meant to be super spooky, it was meant to be kind of silly, but I applied some more effects to it and made it sound a lot more intense and interesting. And then the other thing that I did is I actually took the warehouse ambience, the siren ambience, right where it builds, and I added some more reverb to that and some reverb that faded out. And made that a little more intense. And then the last thing that I did, and I'll get into why later, or in just a minute here, is that it I put in the alarm chime from that same room, and I had that fade in the same way to kind of give a callback or kind of a reminiscent about that really intense moment right before it gets quiet. And then that's actually the sound of one of the doors closing, but I reversed it and layered it onto itself again so that it reverses in and then plays. So that's kind of the breakdown of everything that I used. And So now I'm just going to break down my sort of vision with this. So in the opening, like I said, I wanted this to be kind of ethereal, just surreal, because you're just in this void. And I like to think of this as that you're almost stuck in some sort of purgatory, like you're moving through these doors, each one's a new environment, each one's kind of building in intensity. And so you've got this creepy subway, and this is some fairly mild ambience. And then you have this much more intense ambience in this room. This is kind of overstimulating. It's kind of building into something. Still not super scary, but definitely building into something. And then you're coming into here, and it's really eerie. You have those high notes, and it's kind of building up. But it keeps building and keeps building. And I wanted this room to feel like a sense of urgency and anxiety, like there's something you need to get to or escape from, or there's just something happening here that makes it feel intense and urgent. And when the alarm starts going off, that's why I have it fade in so low, is that I want that intensity of it building and building and building as you get to the door. And then as you get to the door, it opens and you see this peaceful landscape, but it's still getting more and more intense. And I did that to kind of give this sense of urgency to get to this landscape, to get to this almost salvation that you're now seeing from the really horror rooms that you just went through. And then it closes behind you in that really ominous way, and what follows is very quiet. And I wanted it to give an eerie feeling, a false sense of security, and just kind of that really hesitant feeling of what's going to come next all at once. So you move through here, and all that's happening is some gentle wind. And then you make it through, and it's normal. And you have civilization, you have birds chirping, you have cars going by, and it seems almost like you really have completely escaped whatever it was that you were just experiencing. And I wanted it to have that moment of respite, that peace, that sort of feeling of, I'm back into reality and everything's okay. And then you go through the doors of this business, which I took advantage of the fact that you can even see inside. It looks like this is going to be just normal doors. And it opens up, and now you realize that you're not safe, that your ordeal is not done. You turn around, and you see the doors you just went through are gone, and you're out in nothingness. And that's why I had it kind of called back to that intense moment in the warehouse, because I wanted to bring back that feeling of, you barely escaped and now you're back into it. And then I just wanted some reverb at the end to fade out to kind of just give that lasting impression. So I tried to take a more artistic approach to this one, and I tried to actually tell a story with it. Personally, I feel like this is some of the best work that I've ever created, but regardless, that is the process that I use to create my entry for the sound effects guide. I challenge you to sound design this clip, number 8. I hope you found this informative and entertaining, and I hope to see you in the next video.